welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I are going to be running through the Metropolitan division as we just do a deep dive into each division. We're holding off on the Atlantic. We're holding off on the Central because Tampa and Colorado are still slugging it out. Game 6 is tonight, though we don't know what's going to happen as of 4 p.m. when we're recording this on a Saturday. But Justin, we won't get too much into the finals, but are you enjoying yourself?
I'm enjoying every game so far. I mean, this has been, I don't want to say it's lived up to expectations, but I think it's better than most finals have been in recent memory, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, three games that are 3-2, basically, two of them in overtime, one of them a goal with 5-6 minutes left.
Yep.
For game 5. I mean, I thought, oh man, is Colorado going to win 3 overtime games 3-2? Because that would have been crazy too. There has been very few times. I think that the Leafs in 1951, I want to say, whatever year. Oh gosh, what's that defenseman's name that died right after the finals? I can't remember his name.
Died right after the finals.
Yeah, he was poised to be kind of like the superstar, up and coming defenseman, and he died in a fishing accident, and his body was lost at sea for years. And the next time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup was 10 years later, and it was the same in the fall before the season. They finally found his body. Bill Barilko was his name.
Yep, died August 1951 in a float plane crash.
Oh, okay, so it was like a seaplane, probably something
during
like
a fishing trip.
Yep.
Yeah, to Quebec.
Yeah. So he, but they didn't win the cup again until they found his body, which is crazy.
Wow.
But I think that series they won 3 or might have been all 4 games in overtime. I don't remember, but that's in my memory. That I think is the most OT games won in a final, I want to say. But because the Leafs won 4-1, and let's see. Oh, every single game went to OT. All 5 games. It was a 5-game series. Leafs won 4-1. All 5 games went to OT. So the Leafs won all 4 games in overtime. Is crazy. And they won 3 games 3-2 in OT. So that would have been something, but
serendipitous.
Yes. It could still happen tonight or in game 7. See, I'm just rooting for game 7 overtime.
I don't know if we've ever had one of those before.
There has been I think 3 times or 2 times. Detroit for sure has been in 2 of them. Is what I remember. I've looked it up before, but yeah,
I can look it up right now.
Yeah, sure. I know there's only been a few of them. I mean, there's been several OT winners for the Cup, but there has...
Okay, here we go. So the Wings have the distinction of being the only franchise to ever win the Stanley Cup in overtime in Game 7. They've done it twice in 1950 and 54.
There you go. 2 times in 5 years they do it. And that's the Pete Babando or whatever, and Tony Leswick scored those goals. So there you go.
Crazy. I would love it, though. It would be great. I mean, that's how closely matched these games have really been outside of the one blowout, but or the 2 blowouts. But, even then, flip-flopped them. So really, it's just been an entertaining series, really close. And it's just, I think these last 2 games, it's going to come down to Kemper having to be better than Bassey, really.
Yeah, and he, in the games that Colorado has won, he has been. Or he just hasn't had to be. Because Colorado destroyed him. Just as a fun note, the longest we've ever gone between 2 Stanley Cup overtime winners are 1980 to 1996. That was Bob Nystrom in 1980 for the Islanders, and the next time was Uwe Krupp for the Colorado Avalanche in 1996. So that's the longest we went between them. Right now, the last one, of course, is Alec Martinez for the Los Angeles Kings. And then...
that goal still haunts me.
I'll never... that one will come just coming down straight down the middle and just rifling it by... I mean, the Rangers weren't going to win that series, but...
No, I mean, Lundqvist carried them to the finals, so he could only get them so far.
And the only time that it ever happened, I think there's 3 times it happened 2 years in a row. First time was 1933-34. Next time was 50 and 51. Actually, 1950, 1951, 53, 54, all Stanley Cup overtime winners. Like 4 out of 5 years. What a time to be alive. Yeah, what a time to be alive. We saw it in 99 and 2000. I'll never forget Jason Arnott. I don't remember who had the puck coming into the zone, but I remember screaming at my dad. I hated the Devils. And I saw Jason Arnott on the bottom of the screen. All you could see was his head, because this is on the 4:3 TVs, right? There wasn't HD. So you didn't get as big of a view. And I remember seeing the bottom of his head at the bottom of the screen and going, no! and then watching the pass come across, and he rifled it by Eddie Belfour, and that was that. Oh, I hated the Devils then.
Yeah, maybe it's because first time I see the Wings ever go to the Stanley Cup Finals, they just get swept in an embarrassing fashion where they were just a huge, favorite. And God, that was just, ever since then I was like, nope. And then of course the rivalry with Colorado. So those two teams never sat well with me.
Yeah. Well, and you picked against them this time. So who knows? By the time people are listening to this, they might have another cup in their pocket, but we'll see. All right, well, let's dive into the Metropolitan Division. What team you want to start with? Dealer's choice.
Okay. Gosh, let's go Washington Capitals.
Okay, the Washington Capitals, probably the oldest team in the Metropolitan Division. At least maybe the most aging, like that team that's ready to just age out. Seems like that might be them. What do you have for the Capitals? What are your thoughts as they enter into this offseason?
Boy, I think first and foremost, obviously, we just heard recent news about Nicklas Backstrom undergoing some surgery, and it seems like he's probably going to be out for the whole entire season, maybe. I can't remember specifically what disc it was, but I'm pretty sure it was, some basically the same thing that Jack Eichel got. Or was it?
I thought it was a hip.
That's what it was. Yeah. Sorry.
Someone else had that surgery.
That's right. Yeah, Ryan Kessler. That's who it was. And it wasn't termed as career ending, but basically it stopped his career.
Yeah,
that's what it was. Yep.
Someone else recently had that disc replacement surgery.
Yes, it was Joel Farabee from the Philadelphia.
Farabee. Yep.
That's where I was thinking of it. So thank you. But
you're welcome.
So first and foremost, I look at Washington, right? And so you could start at the back end and talk about their goaltending, but for me, it's really finding a replacement for Nicklas Backstrom, because this team is aging, right? You mentioned it, right? They are probably the oldest team in this division, and if not maybe the league. I don't have the numbers in front of me for as far as median age is concerned, but when you look at the core of Oshie, Backstrom, Ovechkin, it's an old team, right? John Carlson is probably the youngest of that core there. Maybe Tom Wilson if you want to throw him in there, but really, they're going to rely on the Bird, Kuznetsov, to center the top line with Ovi, and they're going to have to find somebody to replace Backstrom on that second line, because there's no way Lars Eller is going to play the whole season in the top six. I feel like they could start off with him and maybe trade down the line, find a team that maybe falls off the map pretty quick and see if they can make a move, or find somebody who's a little disgruntled, maybe.
Gotta love the disgruntled guy. Yeah, can you find your Tony D'Angelo or something like that you can pick up? Yeah,
and right, there's probably a few good options out there for them as far as center is concerned. You could really look. We'll maybe talk about them later, but there's another team in this division.
One thing I did see, and I'm going to throw this out there: Washington Capitals are the oldest team in the NHL at 29.6 years old on average.
Okay.
Next is the Dallas Stars, 29.5, and then the Islanders, 29.4, and then the next closest, the Flyers, 28.8. So definitely they're up there. The youngest team, by the way, is the Devils at 25.2 years old.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you have to be careful too, right? If you're Washington looking for a top six center, because one, anybody who's top six worthy is going to want term and money. I don't think money is going to be an issue, especially once Backstrom goes on long term.
Yeah, no problem at all. And to find another guy you're going to pay $9.5, you're not going to find him this offseason unless somehow you're bringing in Johnny Gaudreau.
Exactly, but the problem is right. If you want to bring in a top six center, you're going to have to give him term. And then what do you do if Backstrom comes back next season, right? Or maybe at some point returns this season. I don't know if that's possible. But again, assuming Backstrom comes back next year fully healthy, ready to go, then you got to jettison some money. You got to trade a guy. So there are a couple options out there specifically in this division they could look at. A guy like Ryan Strome, Andrew Kopp, even Evgeny Malkin.
I've heard Evgeny Malkin's name tossed around as like the best replacement for Backstrom.
Yeah, and maybe he could do a one-year deal if you overpay for him a little bit.
Hey, that Russian connection with Ovechkin, there probably is something there. Probably.
Absolutely. Kuznetsov, I mean, right, this team's got plenty of Russians there. So for me, that's the biggest concern, I think, for this team because their window is so small right now. I mean, yes, they've got a lot of their core guys signed up for at least 3 or 4 years here, but I mean, listen, they're aging out at this point, and you don't want to have to go into year 3 or 4 with Backstrom at 37, Ovi at 39 years old, trying to win a cup, right? So you want to do it now. You want to try to get them, why these guys are still productive and still healthy. So the other thing for me, outside of the center position, really to look at is going to be the goaltending, right? They've got 2 RFAs here, Vanacek and Samsonov. And at this point, really, I think the Capitals are in a position where they almost have to just pick a goalie and deal a goalie because you don't want this to be your pair rolling into next season. They didn't have, the greatest of numbers. I mean, Vanacek had a 2.67, 908 save percentage, and Samsonov at a 302, 896 save percentage. So these are 2 guys, right, that aren't really number ones, but one of them could be a really strong backup 1B. So you'd like to try to find some help, and there's not a ton of goaltending on the free agent market. So this should be interesting to see what kind of moves they make. Maybe they make a trade here. Maybe this is the right position to deal some picks and maybe a prospect. So we'll see what they do. But for me, those are the 2 biggest needs. And then, of course, there's, little things like maybe finding another top 4 defenseman, et cetera, et cetera. But this team's got a lot of work to do, especially with the small window they have right now.
Yes. In terms of goaltending, any chance you think Braden Holtby could come back to Washington?
Yeah, I mean, look, this team's got, right, some budget issues too. Like I mentioned, they have about $8 to $9 million in current cap space, and then whatever they get on LTIR from Backstrom, and he's at 9.2 right now. But look, they've got to bring in a top 4 defenseman. I feel like because you can't go in with Orlov, Jensen, and Carlson as your big 4, or Van Riemsdyk being in that 4 spot, and maybe Justin Schultz gets signed on the cheap, and then you can just kind of figure it out as the season progresses and see how they do. But they need some infusion of talent back there, and so for the goaltending situation, right, you're going to have to give one of these guys a few $1 million. You've got to bring in maybe another defenseman on your bottom pair, so that's going to eat up at least half the money, and so you've got $3-4 million to play with. To find yourself a goaltender if that's where you want to go, and if you decide the free agent market's the way to go. And again, like I said, there's not a ton of talent available, and so when you look at options, right, Holtby could be somebody you could bring in for $2-3 million on the cheap for 1 or 2 years. Given his injury history, and I think he played well enough in Dallas to warrant that kind of a contract for a few $1 million and get himself a little raise, and then he could go out there and potentially give you some money or give you some wins, and maybe he's kind of reinvigorated or refreshed his ability to still be a starting goaltender in this league.
Yeah, I like the thought. It's a good thought. Just the way that they're going this year, and looking at like what the picks that they've had the last couple of years, I don't think that Hendrix Lapierre is going to be ready to go. He was their first round pick in 2020. He only played 6 games this last year. And they really haven't. The last year they had no first round pick. The year before they had no second round pick, no third round pick either. I mean, it's just the cupboards are kind of bare for this Capitals team, and that also can spell kind of the end. You know, you can only go so like bare cupboards for so long before you have to just kind of have to have a year. Maybe not where you're going to go and bomb out. They've done a nice job. They've got a pick in the first round, second round, third round this season, and I think this is something they need to just kind of sit with. Like they maybe need to use those picks, restock the cupboards, make good selections, and look at this like either you need to do that or you need to just use those picks, go balls out, bring in some guys, and say, we only have Ovechkin for so long. Let's go. Like, do you take it as a retool year? Say, Backstrom's gone. We're not sure who we're going to be able to bring in. Maybe we just kind of see what happens, and you just spend your 1 year where you're maybe not going to make the playoffs, and you can let Ovechkin kind of go ham, and then you come back the following year with some more assets and maybe a refreshed team. That to me, considering what the rest of this division's doing, I mean, no one in this division is really going to get worse. Outside of maybe the Penguins, you look at them and you go, "Ooh, they might get worse," but they're going to have a lot of money to spend too, so they're not going to just like go away. They still have Sidney Crosby. They're still going to have Jake Getzel. They're likely going to have Chris Letang. I think Chris Letang is going to re-sign in Pittsburgh, and maybe that's the next team we talk about. But they have the ability to go out and refresh themselves too. It's going to be a tough pickings in this division, in my opinion, where things are going.
Yeah, if I'm Washington management and especially ownership, I think is going to push for this. You still want to be competitive. Why Ovi still got it, and I think they just go balls out, go ham, just get rid of those first rounders, make some moves, bring in guys, and just go right and see what you can do, and then worry about rebuilding, restocking, and doing all that stuff when Ovi's gone and calls it a day.
By the way, I misspoke. One site obviously didn't update their stats. Hendrix Lapierre did have 51 points in 40 games in the queue, so that's my bad. But yeah, I mean, as far as like AHL guys coming up, there's like Joe Snively. He had a nice season in the A, 38 points in 35 games. So you're gonna kind of have to look to the cupboards to see what they can find. I mean, he's 26 years old. It's not as if he's been around for a while. I think that's kind of where you're going to have to look if you're the Capitals, is like, who can you kind of graduate up to your main roster to have an impact, because you're just really not going to probably find a whole lot via free agency, because you have to spend so much more on these free agents, right? Like you can only bring in so many $2, $3, $4 million guys before you're overwhelmed, and then you look back 2 years later and you go, why did they sign that guy? Just like almost he was over the hill and you signed him to a deal and now it's coming back to bite you. You don't want to do that if you're the Capitals.
No, I think if you're Washington, right, you need these AHL guys to come in and kind of fill out that bottom six and be, competitive and contribute. So, hopefully they got a few guys down there that can do that and are going to step it up next year.
One thing I do wonder, I know that Marc-Andre Fleury said, I'm not sure I could go to Washington, and that was all via trade. I wonder if Washington, if they ponied up and they said, no, come in here, you haven't played for the Penguins in a long time. Let's chat. If like all things, let's say Malkin signs with the Capitals and Letang leaves Pittsburgh kind of looks like a shell of itself. Does maybe Marc-Andre Fleury go, yeah, you know what? I could sign with Washington.
Nope.
No chance.
I think it's Minnesota, Pittsburgh, or retirement at this point.
All right. Okay, well, let's move on then. By the way, I think that if the Capitals have the ability, if they use their first round pick, I think using their first round pick on defense in this draft is the way to go. They just don't have a big cupboard full of defensemen, And I think that's what I would do if I were the Capitals. Just go out and snag that. I mean, they did take in 2021 in the second round. That was their first pick of the draft, was Vincent Rio, and he was taken by the Capitals. So he had a nice season down with the Brandon Wheat Kings, but I don't think he'll play in the American Hockey League. Most 19-year-olds aren't ready to go to the NHL. And he may get an opportunity during the season, but he's not going to be ready at all to go. But I think Capitals probably need to keep on pulling defenders because everything else looks pretty shallow once you kind of get past that Carlson. Just like you said, you look at the rest of their defense and it's just a little scary there. So got to stock the cupboards there. Okay, well, why don't we go to Pittsburgh, because we were just sort of talking about them. What do you think chances that Malkin and Letang re-sign in Pittsburgh together?
Together, both of them. Oh, looking at their cap situation, right? I mean, they've got $23 million in cap space, so they probably have some money to do it. But the term is what I think is going to be the sticking point for a guy like Malkin. Especially at 35, he's probably looking for that last contract, that last bit of money, and with
maybe
Gensel's,
3 years,
right? And with Gensel's, new deal coming up, after next season, they've got to
no. He's got 2 years left on his deal.
No, but next year you can re-sign him, right? So
yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
The minute free agency kicks in next year, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to think about that long term, and so to me, especially with the money that I've been hearing for Letang that they're throwing at him right now, I think the chances are probably, I'm going to say 25% that they can get both guys signed.
Okay. Who do you think is the more likely player to sign with the Penguins?
Chris Letang all the way. It's definitely harder to find these types of defensemen, especially when Chris Letang basically had the best season of his career, staying healthy, putting up the points he did. And what they have on the back end there is pretty dull compared to the offensive output.
He's definitely, if you have to choose who can we afford to lose, well, it's Malkin. You could, right. Malkin also only played in half games.
Yeah, and Jeff Carter has still shown the ability to be able to step up in a top six role. He still can skate very, very well. Still knows how to dish, and is a good face-off guy. So if you have to put him in there for half the year while you figure it out, or trade, or go inside a free agent, who knows? But he can do it and still fill in, I think, admirably.
Yeah, the last time Malkin missed fewer than 5 games in a season was 2017-18.
Wow.
He missed 41 this last year. How many games were played in 2020-2021?
I think 56.
Was that 56? Okay, so he missed 23 games that year. 1920, I think, was right around 65, 68 games, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
for most people.
So he played 55 games, so you're looking at least 10 games he missed. And 18-19, he played 68 games, so he missed 14 games that year. Played 78 in 17-18. 16-17, he only played 62. 15-16, he only played 57. The last time he played a full season was 2008-9. He has been hammered by injuries his entire career. Fantastic player. You would take him if you knew whatever. If a guy plays 70 games in a year, that's fine. 75 games. But you're practically guaranteed that he's going to play less than 60 games. So
at this point, sure seems like it.
That's the other tough part, is you're paying a guy to not play. And that's a big chunk of your cap. Now, if you could, bury the whole thing, and it's not worth it. I don't think that it's worth it. I think for the Penguins, I think they're in a better place if they don't bring back Malkin, in fact. I don't think they should. I think they can go out and get a player who's, obviously not Malkin, but you can go out and get a player who will be healthy, can be in your lineup more often, and that in and of itself provides some continuity, some consistency, and you don't have to worry about how many games he's going to end up giving you. So I think I would just say, right here, right now, thank you for everything you've done for our organization. We're going to all move on. And that's okay. Nobody's mad at each other. I think that for what he wants, the kind of money that he's going to want, no, it's great. If he was coming after $5 million, I would say, heck yeah, sign him. $6 million, sure. But more than that, nah, I couldn't.
Yeah, and it's the term thing too, right? I mean, yes, you want to ultimately, keep him around as long as possible. But, they, like I said, they've got other contracts that are going to need extending. And, really it just comes down to, again, where you think your money's best spent. And it's no fault of Malkin's, but I just think it's better for this team now to focus on other areas and spend the money there.
How about this, Justin? How about Claude Giroux goes to Pittsburgh? How about that? You think he'd go to Pittsburgh?
No, I think it's the same as Marc-Andre Fleury not wanting to go to Washington. So
I think so too.
Can't.
Yeah, I mean, for Pittsburgh, if they're willing to spend the money, I think they go after Nazem Kadri. I think that he would be a huge target for them. 31 years old. You could probably sign him to a 5-year deal, and you could get him. He's not gonna command a 1.15 points per game kind of salary because of who he played with and the team that he was on. He's going to command a big salary, but I think he'd be a really good fit in Pittsburgh if he were willing to go there. I would target him all day over Malkin.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think right now at this point in his career, Kadri would be a welcome addition to that team. I think what he can bring as far as like grit and sandpaper and just that agitation, right, is fantastic. And, the only thing I worry
had
about
87 points.
Right. Well, the only thing I worry about with Kadri is he's, cashing in on a contract year. And, is this the Kadri you're going to get year in and year out, right? I think I'm kind of with you where I feel like, yes, he had the benefit of playing with guys like Landeskog and Rantanen for most of the year. And so, is he more or less I think personally he's more or less like a 60-point guy he was back in Toronto, 30 goals, 30 assists. And I think that's what you're going to get out of him. And not that that's bad or anything, but, again, I'm not paying him $8-9 million, $7. Yeah, I'd give him $7 million for 3 or 4 years and, see what he can do. But I feel like he's going to try to cash in for 7 years. And to me, I would not touch him at 7 years. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia is going to plug at him anyway. So
it'll be interesting. I think if he's smart, he'll stay in Colorado. But we'll wait and see.
Oh, absolutely. But you're not going to turn down. I mean, you're not going to go and sign in Colorado for $5.5 million or I guess Colorado has $25 million in cap space, so they could do it. But they're also losing a lot of players. They got to re-sign a lot of guys.
Yeah, you've got McKinnon's extension coming up. I mean, that's going to cost you so much money. My God.
Yeah, that might be he might be the most expensive, have the biggest contract in the league. He will probably have a bigger salary than Connor McDavid, is my guess. And unless
he might come in and say, "I want the full 20%," right?
Unless he says, "Hey, I'll take my discount for the team," kind of vibe, like pay me 10.
Yeah, maybe if they don't win the cup, right? Maybe he's willing to take that, that discount, or maybe he says, "You know what? We got our cup. I want to cash in now."
Yeah, could be. Well, he can sign an extension on July 13th. We'll see if that happens, but that's going to be a doozy. 12.5 is the number right now that McDavid sits at, and I think that he's going to exceed it because he's going to go, he's going to sign an 8-year deal, and that deal, it'll take him till he's 34, 35 years old, and he's going to look at it and go, hey, by the time that deal's over, the top deal in the league will probably be $16 million. The cap's going to go up, and he'll look at that and say, yeah, it might be tight right now, but it won't be later. So we're going to do it.
Yeah. But so back to Pittsburgh though, outside of, the Letang Malkin drama, I guess, what is maybe one area or, maybe do you think that there's some minor league guys in the, prospects in the pool that can come up and, but what's really the one area you think that they should really focus on outside of those two guys this offseason?
Oh, man, I just as great as Tristan Jarry was, am I sold on Tristan Jarry all year long? To me, Pittsburgh is kind of tied to that goaltending, right? Like they have. If it weren't for Jari's injury, they probably win in the first round. They probably beat the New York Rangers. They were dominant against the Rangers, especially that Crosby line. Crosby goes down, but Jari didn't play at all. They have to go to their third string goaltender. I think you got to look at that goaltending position, and if it's me, I'm going out to Marc-Andre Fleury, and I'm saying, let's like give this one more shot. Come back to Pittsburgh. Obviously, we loved you. Like I think Marc-Andre Fleury would have a job in that organization tomorrow if he retired. Like, he is beloved in Pittsburgh. I think there's a 10% chance that he doesn't sign in Pittsburgh this offseason. I think if he's willing to accept a reasonable dollar amount, he's the goalie in Pittsburgh. In my mind, and you go, you know what, Jari, you're not going anywhere. You're going to play half the games. Like, you're just going to have competition, and the two of you can compete. And then at the end of the season, Marc-Andre Fleury maybe you sign him again, but also you've got Jari as a UFA. And if Jari has a better season than Marc-Andre Fleury, then you just sign him, and then he's your goalie. I think that it's a win-win to bring in Marc-Andre Fleury, and that's what I would be putting a lot of my eggs into that basket.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously right. The risk you're taking. I mean he hasn't played more than half a season, as a starter until this year. Right, this is the first year he's been a bona fide. I mean, you could throw him last year, but really this year is the first year you look at him and you say, you know what, this is truly his net moving forward. So, yeah, I mean, I think a veteran backup would be ideal because you don't want to have to go to Casey DeSmith again. You don't want to have to rely on Louis Domingue, although I highly suggest they re-sign him just for, his media comments anyways. But,
yeah.
I mean, gosh, pork and broccoli, that's fantastic. But, dude, I mean, yeah, Marc-Andre Fleury is a win-win for this franchise. It's a great place for him to go as well. I'm leaning 60-40. He re-signs in Pittsburgh. The other 40% in Minnesota. But, I think, and again, if you just have to decide really, if you're management, do you try to re-sign Tristan Jarry before you sign Marc-Andre Fleury and give him that extension, or do you wait and play out the year and see how he does? Because if not, then you really, you could maybe get him a little bit cheaper, or maybe you can, somehow just, maybe make the decision that, you know what, he's just not our guy of the future. Let's go out and make a move.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, he's your guy of the future, but it can't hurt to have Marc-Andre Fleury there. Who cares? Fleury can play 35 games, and Jarry can play 45.
Oh, no, I agree. And I think, if anything, it's great to have that kind of veteran leadership and presence there in that net for him to kind of learn. Because, again, I think he is going to be the guy for the next, 4 or 5 years at least. And so, give him that veteran presence there to kind of, teach him the ropes and maybe get over that hump, because he hasn't had any playoff experience and any success at that matter. So have a guy there that can be there to mentor him in that aspect. And then if you want, you can put Fleury in for the playoffs and, let him ride out into the sunset that way.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if he could just play out his career, with the rest of his career with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That would be fine with me. I think that, he was kind of mistreated in Vegas, and it made everybody mad and just made everyone almost love him even more.
Right.
Just because of that. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Penguins still have, they've had a lot of first round exits lately, and I'm sure that's not sitting well with anybody. But they're still a good team. I mean, they still are a team that is, you don't want to play them in the first round. If they're healthy, they're going to be real good. They've got some good players coming. I mean, they're when did they draft this Jordan Frasca? I mean, he's tearing it up in the OHL. He's got 87 points in 61 games and tore it up in the playoffs. So, I mean, there's
Alexander Nylander could come up and play a middle six role for him. I mean, they've got some pieces for sure.
Yeah, they've been trading away a lot of their picks because, hey, they've had to. They acquired Jason Zucker. They're going out and grabbing a lot of players where they were spending their first-round picks. They don't have a second or a third-round pick in this upcoming draft, but they do have a first-round pick. I think you're starting to see that more often, that teams are much more willing. Yeah, we'll trade our second, our third, our fourth. We don't care. But if we can hang on to that first-round pick, that's the one we really care about. And the more first-round picks you can hold on to, I think the longer your team will remain relevant.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it now more and more where players in the middle to the back end of the first round are still really, really good. Whereas before, if you didn't get a pick in the top 5, 6, it was like rolling the dice on a lot of guys, right? And you were hoping to hit on somebody. So, yep. I mean, look at Boston. Gosh, at 2012, I think it was when they had the 15th, 16th, and 17th pick, or maybe it was 14, 15, yep. 16, yep. But they really haven't hit on any of them. So,
yeah, that was a bad time for Don Sweeney.
Yeah.
I guess as far as the Penguins go, I think they'll still be good next year. The tough thing is going to be competing with the other teams in this division who are definitely going to get better. One of those teams being the Philadelphia Flyers. Philadelphia Flyers don't even need to change the players they have on their team, because they brought in John Tortorella, who is... John Tortorella is like he's the farmer milking the cow, and he squeezes those udders so hard just to get every gosh darn ounce of milk out of those things. That is what he does to hockey players. He milks them, and he will drain every ounce of talent and ability out of his guys. And I mean, yes, Joel Farabee, he's going to be out for, he probably won't be available until the new year, maybe a little sooner, but it's going to be a little bit of a road for him. That's a goal scorer that you're definitely going to miss. Cam Atkinson, best years of his career were with John Tortorella, and that's going to continue. He'll find his scoring prowess, and someone else who I think is actually going to do really, really well under John Tortorella is Kevin Hayes. I think we haven't really seen the Kevin Hayes that I think Flyers fans expected when they signed him, out of Winnipeg, out of New York. Kevin Hayes that year, he was having a dandy of a year, 55 points in 71 games. For the type of player that he is, that was really good, and that was kind of what you expected out of him. The last 2 years, 10 and 12 goals, that's just not going to cut it. And I think that John Tortorella is going to use him properly. You're going to find out real quick if he's going to work, or if the Flyers are going to find a way to deal him, would be my guess. And then the other guy that I think he might be able to kind of find and milk out would be Owen Tippett, who has just not found his way in the league yet. But he also has not had a coach like John Tortorella. He's had a lot of players' coaches, but no one like Tortorella. And I wonder if he can't make Owen Tippett relevant again, or for the first time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, right? I think Tippett is the type of player that I think would play well under, Tortorella's system. And not only that, too, but Tippett really didn't have the opportunity to play some big minutes in Florida, right? They had all the big-name guys there already,
sure.
Eating up the minutes. And I think with this team, especially with Farabee being out, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for him to play second power play, middle 6 minutes there. For me, the one big thing, the coaching change is, I think, going to, not only is it going to be just a coaching change, but I think it's going to shift the culture back to that old-school Philadelphia mindset a little bit. We forget last year that for half the season, Sean Couturier was out. Ryan Ellis was only playing a couple games here. So getting those two guys back, hopefully healthy at some point, ready to play for the year and playing under Torts. Obviously, with any new system, there's going to be a learning curve at the beginning of the year, but I think you'll get them firing pretty quick. And if you get a Ryan Ellis back for the whole season, and maybe you can get Provorov back to close to where you think he can be, and Ristolainen starting to play his old game again, man, this could be a dangerous back end and better for a guy like Carter Hart, who, I mean, let's face it, Tortorella's always had good goaltending wherever he's gone.
Yep.
So maybe Carter Hart's the next,
And Carter Hart played much better last season than he did the year before. Forget goals against average. That wasn't his fault. His team was god-awful, especially in front of him. A little bit better of a save percentage, a much better save percentage from 2020 to 2021. I see his system just being better for any goalie who was coming from that mess that he was experiencing before. I also you mentioned Sean Couturier. Man, is there a player that maybe matches up with John Tortorella better? Like the way that he plays, his attention to detail, his ability to kind of do everything. He really is that like Swiss Army knife type of player. You can put him anywhere, do anything with him, and he's going to be fantastic. I think, John Tortorella, out of any team he could have coached, this was it. He just fits the vibe. I'm really excited to see what he can do with this Flyers team, especially that, can he grab Ivan Provorov and get him back on track because he had a really bad year last year. That'll be what you're going to find over this next year. Philadelphia may or may not make the playoffs. This is a great division. They might not make the playoffs, but I think what will happen very quickly, you're going to see who's going to fit and who won't. And by the following offseason, this may be a completely different team because they could jettison a few names and bring in some other guys because this type of coach, you don't just go out and bring in anybody you want and have him just kind of change his style for those players. No, you go out and you get the right kind of guys for someone like John Tortorella, and I think that's what the Flyers will end up doing.
Yeah, I think one name to keep an eye on in free agency, like this is a team I don't think is going to, they've got $5+ million to spend in free agency, and they're not going to go out and spend a lot of money, if anything at all. They might, sign a backup goaltender, get, some depth forwards, that kind of thing. But to me, I think if there's any addition to be made, it's going to be someone who you can maybe second power play unit, play bottom, pairing minutes. And I look at a guy like PK Subban, who could be a little bit of a reclamation project. Now, he's not going to be back to his old, Norris winning ways, $9 million, that sort of play. But I think Tortorella, again, when you talk about a coach who squeezes the last ounce of hockey out of a guy, PK Subban to me is a guy who still has wheels. He can still play hard-nosed hockey and has that offensive ability that I think a guy like Torts could just squeeze a little last juice out of and maybe help revitalize his career a little bit.
I like it. That would be a very interesting signing, PK Subban. I don't know that PK would be willing to go play for John Tortorella.
Now that is a different thing, right?
You have to choose. To go there? That's the other thing is that you're choosing to go there. That's not an easy choice to make sometimes. I also Cam York. He was playing in the AHL last year for the Flyers. He's their first round pick in 2019, 14th overall. He's reliable in his own zone. He spent 2 years with Michigan Wolverines in college hockey. He captained the Team USA to gold in 2020 or 2021. I'm not sure what year that is, but he captained that team. So you've got a guy coming who can carry the puck. He's got lots of upside. And he I think is going to be ready to go this season. So he's somebody to keep an eye on because that could really change the Flyers' defensive core. If suddenly you have a guy who can move the puck and create some offense, that is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and if anything, it helps push the other guys like Provorov and Travis Sanheim on that left side for minutes, right? And so you're those two guys, you're like, crap, I got to get my shit together, be on top of it because we got this kid coming up who I'm sure Torts is going to start to mentor and really take a shine to. And
he did play for the Flyers last year for 13 games. He had a goal and 3 assists. So he's gotten that little scratch to the NHL. So that's always something to keep an eye on too. So keep an eye out for Cam York. What team you want to go to next? We've got both New York teams, the Devils, the Blue Jackets, and the Hurricanes.
Boy, you know what? Let's go to Columbus. Let's go to Torch's old team.
Okay, there you go. Good little transition there. What are you seeing with this team?
Boy, you know, this could be one of those teams, right? We talked about Flyers getting better. You know, teams that have to really improve, right? And for me, I think this is a team that could go the other way or could improve, right? And I think it all kind of hangs on one guy in particular. And for me, that's Kent Johnson, right? I mean, obviously, I think eventually they're going to get a deal done with a guy like Patrick Laine, get him re-signed.
Or they'll trade him.
Right, or they'll trade him. But I think when you look at Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger, these two guys coming up, oh, man, they could bring a lot of excitement to this forward group and really start to, you know, change the face of this franchise a little bit in terms of the way they play hockey, right? I mean, ever since Rick Nash has been in the league, this team has always been a pretty low-scoring team. They've never really been like, you know, the type of Maple Leafs team we're seeing, you know, in recent years, and where they can go out and beat you 6-5 every single night if they want to. But these two guys could sort of shift that culture, shift that type of play into that more offensive-minded style of play. And I mean, I've always been a fan of Kent Johnson's. I think, man, he could be really something special coming out of Michigan. He looked really, really good last year. Granted, only 3 points in 9 games for Columbus, but I think he's got
coming in halfway
special
through the year. That's a tough, like at the end of the year.
He's 19 years old, right? But I think these two guys are something special. They'll get full seasons, I think, next year to look at. Cole Sillinger obviously is super exciting. He's just got Jets at, you know, 31 points in 79 games. Not anything too crazy.
And a rookie season, it's fantastic, you know?
Right, yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, the other big thing is, I think, you know, for Columbus, I think you're going to see, you know, Korpisalo get jettisoned at some point this year. Hopefully they get a little healthier with Boone Jenner coming back. And, man, you know, I think there's a lot of upside for this team, but also at the same time, because that upside is a lot of younger talent, this could be one of those teams that maybe goes the opposite way, right? Maybe these young guys just aren't ready, or maybe they just can't put this team on their shoulder quite yet and carry them against the division, right? You mentioned that it's so tough with Carolina, the Rangers, you know, Washington's still there. So, you know, Philly's getting better. The Devils look like they could be. I mean, Jack Hughes could be just a monster. So, you know, Columbus could be a team that could be heading the opposite way.
This is probably the last place team in the Metro to me. And that would, you know, that wouldn't be the worst thing for the Blue Jackets at this point. I think that it would be a good thing for this team to retool. They've got some veteran guys. I know they've got Voracek. They're paying him a pretty penny. I'm sure they won't be. This isn't going to be last place in the division with 60 points. I think this division is like everyone in here is kind of getting a little better. It's going to be, you know, teams are going to be in the 70s. For maybe the last place in this division, but the Blue Jackets definitely trend in that direction to being one of the bottom teams once again in the Metro. But yeah, I think they'll be exciting. I just think there's some growing pains that are going to happen here, and it'll take them a couple years to become relevant again in terms of the playoff picture. They've got 2 first-round picks this year, their own and Chicago's, so they've got a couple picks that are quite high in the draft. So that's huge for them. They'll make some good selections, I hope, and you know, Jarmo Kekalainen, he always does a good job through the draft. So I think that's where you kind of are putting your hopes right now, is in the future if you're a Blue Jackets fan. And then what can they do with the pieces they currently have? Can you find a home for Voracek potentially? Can you find a place for Nyquist and get some assets back for him? Not a whole lot of UFAs, so you're not really too worried about that. Those would be the only 2 players on my radar that I'd be thinking, if you could deal. Like, if you could deal Voracek right now, I would do it. If somebody's willing to grab him, even if you have to hold on to a couple million, I think Voracek is still a guy that's valued around the league. People like him. 62 points last year, only 6 goals, but 56 assists, which is just an unbelievable You don't see too often. 6 goals and 56 assists. Holy crap. That's a tremendous differential. So, I mean, of course, you can hang on to him and use him as somebody to bring along these younger guys, but there may be some teams out there who'd be willing to take Voracek off your hands, and you could get a good asset for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think they found some good chemistry between Voracek and Laine last year. I think they worked out pretty well. Obviously, the big thing for them is finding, big name centers to play for these guys. Again, I think Kent Johnson is going to be that guy, but it's going to probably take a couple of years for him to get up there, and maybe Cole Sillinger, who knows? But I don't really even know if he's a true center yet or a winger at this point. We'll wait and see. But maybe they go in the draft, right, and they get somebody like a Connor Geekie or Logan. I mean, gosh, there's plenty of options at center in this draft, and so maybe they go that route. But what I'm curious about, is Patrick Laine, right? You mentioned him, and the chemistry with Voracek I just mentioned there. I wonder if there's a team out there that's going to potentially offer sheet a guy like this, because I get the feeling that he wants a lot of money. Columbus just hasn't been willing to pony up yet. There's some hesitancy to re-sign there. Maybe it's because he's looking for a full move or who knows what. But I imagine he probably wants close to $7.5+ million at least, maybe closer to $9 for a guy that can potentially put up 30 to 40 goals every year. But who knows? Maybe he just wants out, right? Who knows? And so I think if you're a team, maybe are you willing to give him $8 million and pony up a first, second, and third round pick for a guy like that? I don't really think that's out of the question, right?
Do guys just not want to be in Columbus because it's boring, or does everyone hate Ohio State as much as Michigan fans do?
Well, I mean, I've been to Columbus a number of times. The city to me is, if you can go to a place like Vegas, place like New York, yes, obviously there's a huge difference there, right? But when you look at other towns like St. Louis, I've been there.
Yeah.
St. Louis to me is way more exciting than Columbus. I love everything about that. Same thing with Nashville, right? I mean, that's a much more exciting place to be. And so, maybe it has to do with Ohio, because really once you get outside a couple of their major cities, there's not much going on. And it is just, it is Ohio. Let's just be honest about it. And if you're on a team that's, expected to be towards the bottom of the division again, too, do you want to sign a long-term deal? Maybe he only wants a 1 or 2 year deal to ride in the free agency so he can go be like, Pierre-Luc Dubois and test it out. But, I know obviously, Columbus doesn't want to get rid of him for next to nothing. But if you're a team willing to give him $8 to $8.5 million and only have to give up a first, second, and third as offer sheet compensation, I might pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's he would change any team's top 6. That's for sure. He's become a little more responsible defensively the last couple of years.
Yeah, maybe if you're a team like New Jersey, right, who's really looking to make a push and get over that hump and really accelerate the Jack Hughes era, right? This could be a guy you could put alongside Jack Hughes, and man, I'm sure those two guys would probably tear it up.
Very much so, yeah. He could use the winger. That's we can go to the Devils next. That's probably the area of need. Is who can we put with Jack Hughes? Who can we put with Nico Hischier to give that spark? Guys that they can feed and set up, and that's kind of what they've been missing. The Devils are a fascinating team because they only have 4 players under contract in 2024 or 2023. So after this year, everyone is an RFA or a UFA except Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Dougie Hamilton, and Dawson Mercer. That's it. That's all the guys on their roster right now that have contracts. So with that said, it's a weird position for a team like this to be in because they're rebuilding. They're trying to come out of this rebuild, and here you find yourself, no one has any contract. Now, Boqvist will get signed, Bratt, Miles Wood, Zaka. I would think that all those guys are going to get deals. But It's just an interesting spot to be in where you only have 2 forwards signed beyond this year. Only 1 defenseman, or 3 forwards, sorry. Only 1 defenseman. It's very odd.
And I think that really has to do with why every mock draft I've seen right now with the Devils at number 2 have them taking Slavkovsky, the left winger out of Finland right now, is looking like the cemented number 2 pick regardless who the Montreal Canadiens take at number 1, I think, at that center position, right? Whether it's Logan Cooley, Shane Wright, I think, honestly, it's already cemented that the Devils are going to take a winger because they need that help. And yes, Jesper Bratt's going to be, signed at some point. He's going to be a great top 6 winger to have up there. But you got to think Thomas Tatar, he's on the other side of 30 now. So, at some point he's going to decline. And he's not really his former self when they brought him in there. So I think they'll probably move on from him at some point, but you still need other wingers to come in. And I think, this could be a great opportunity too for the Devils to make an offer sheet to a guy like, Patrick Laine, or, spend some free agent money now too, right? There's some big name wingers out there, guys like Philip Forsberg, Johnny Gaudreau, who's been, linked to New Jersey as long as I can remember because he's from that area.
Yeah.
And you could even go as far as, making a move to bring in a guy like Kevin Fiala from Minnesota, who I think, that team's going to deal anyways as an RFA because they just can't afford to keep him thanks to, Parise and Suter's contracts. So, a guy like Fiala would fit in really nice alongside Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier because let's face it, if you have those 2 guys at the center position for you, that's not a bad way to build your team. So
no, they certainly have options. There are options out there. It just depends on what you're willing to spend.
Absolutely. And so the other thing, too, that you got to look at for this team outside of just finding a couple wingers for these centers to play with is you got to find a goaltender, right? Jonathan Bernier, I don't know what his, injury status is at this point. He was on IR pretty much the whole year. Mackenzie Blackwood, to me, he's an RFA after this season, but I think up until this season, I really had high hopes for him. I thought he could be the goaltender of the future for the Devils, but it really just doesn't feel like that anymore. And I think the team itself, management, has sort of lost confidence, and I think that's why you hear, that being towards the top, top focus for this team outside of wingers is finding another goaltender and, where they go, because, again, there's not a lot of big-name starters out there for them to pluck. A guy like Darcy Kemper might re-sign in Colorado. He might be available, but
maybe you go to the RFA and you go like a Georgiev, Ilya Samsonov. There's a couple of those names. I don't know that Jack Campbell signs with the Leafs or not, but if he doesn't, he's probably the number 1 target for a lot of these teams without a goalie because he's only 30. You can get him for free. He proved that he can play, but isn't going to get $5 million, I don't think. So
his contract situation is going to be the most interesting this offseason as far as goalies are concerned because really this is going to be his one and only payday, and I think he's going to want to try to cash in. And I can't blame him, but at the same time, he doesn't have a lot of leverage, right, in negotiations. So it's going to be an interesting one for sure. Now, the other free agent name in the goaltending market I really look at is Ville Husso because he's a guy who I think likely will stay in St. Louis, but if he becomes available and just wants to see what's out there, I think at 27, he's still young enough. He's still got some life left in him, and I think because he's never really been a starter and played a lot of games up until now, he could be a guy who could come in and you could get him on the cheap. And
I don't think there's any chance he signs in St. Louis.
You don't think so?
No. With $9 million available to them, and St. Louis needs to go out and they don't need to bring in any more top 6 forwards. They've got plenty of those. But they need to fill in the bottom stretch. Their defense needs a refresh, in my opinion. I don't know that you can go back and have Marco Scandella in your top 6 anymore, or your top 4. Sorry, your top 4. I think he's still fine.
I think they would like Nick Leddy back in there, personally. But again,
if they could sign Nick Leddy, But and Scott Perunovich, he looked real good, but I don't know that they're going to be willing to pay Husso for multiple years, like maybe 2, but I think on the open market, Husso could probably get 3 or 4 years. Somebody will take a flyer on him if they're willing to get him for $3 million, $3.5 million.
Sure.
I just don't see him signing in St. Louis. And I don't know that would be the best thing. Like, you've got Jordan Binnington. He found his game at the end of the year. He was so good in the playoffs. I think you got to ride with that. I don't think you could bring Husso back and be like, hey, remember, Jordan, just in case you suck again. I don't know. It just doesn't. It would seem weird to me.
One name I will tell you that I think would be just a fun pun on a name that I think fits in well with the Devils. A Magnus Hellberg. Looking at him as a goaltender, he was signed as a free agent at the end of the year by Detroit. A former, second round pick who played with Nashville, New York, had a few games that hasn't played. He's only played 4 games at the NHL, or 5 games now with Detroit last year. But I mean, over in Sweden, he was, the World Cup, the Olympics, and he was phenomenal in both those tournaments. And played in the KHL all last year, 37 games, .917 save percentage was great there. And I think he's looking for a comeback. And this could be somebody, if you want to bring in super cheap, who might need 2 or 3 years. This could be a guy that could really, really help you get over that hump, or at least be a nice Band-Aid till you figure out what you want to do long term.
There you go. What did the Devils do if Shane Wright doesn't get taken by the Montreal Canadiens?
Boy, I still think you got to go winger.
You don't think that they would just say, hey, Shane, you're playing the wing?
No, because here's the thing, too. I think, Shane Wright, while he's a center and could potentially play the wing, does he want to do that, right? I think that's the question you really have to ask him. And
well, you're almost always going to go to the wing anyways in the first year. Yeah,
most likely. But I think you got to think long term, right? Do we want to invest in this guy for him to play third line center or potentially be a top 6 wing? Do we see him as a winger, right? I think these are all the questions really that New Jersey has to ask themselves. And the bigger one for me is Shane Wright is not the explosive playmaker that a guy like Logan Cooley is, right? He's not that huge offensively minded guy when you look at that hockey IQ, but I think Shane Wright is well worthy of a number 1 pick, and he's going to be a great forward. But
well, it sure doesn't sound like it.
But I mean,
Shane Wright's a piece of shit, man. He's terrible, but I mean, he is worthy of a first overall pick.
Well, I mean, you know what? I mean, listen, I can't be mad at Montreal if they decide to take him. He's not the guy I think I would
he's like
take.
the best overall. Like he's the best player. You're right. He's like Nico Hischier. It's basically like you're drafting another Nico Hischier.
Right, but for me, I want high-end skill. I want guys who can shoot and skate. And to me, I think a guy like Slafkovsky is that guy because, again, when you pair him with one of those centermen, he's very active. He's a good checker in both zones, and he knows how to produce offensively. And I think for a guy like that, I mean, would be fantastic. Now, if they want to go away from that a little bit, you could go power forward, right?
But that's all I'm saying is that if Montreal, I think you're right. They're going to take Slafkovsky unless he gets taken first overall.
Maybe Montreal goes that route, right? We got Nick Suzuki here, and we need a winger to pair with him. So that could very well happen.
I think it's unlikely, but I think it's one of those there's always those stories every year. I remember when I was like, the Leafs might want to take Laine. He might be the better player long term. I was like, are you an idiot? What? Like, the man is over there playing in Switzerland, dominating against men, and he's a little boy. Like, are you that? I mean, of course, Laine had a great first year. He scored 40 goals and. So did Matthews. It was, in the beginning, it was like, wow, maybe they were right. Like this is going to be like that Crosby Ovechkin kind of vibe. And then Matthews has since become top. Well, I mean,
he's the best goal scorer in the league right now.
According to the players, he was the best player in the NHL this last year. So, and that is never going to be going to Laine. And that's not a knock on Laine. It just. Matthews is so good. He's a generational talent. He is among McDavid and Draisaitl, and there's very few players that are going to be like him, and that just is what it is. And unfortunately, in this draft, there are none of those players.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, right?
For Montreal and New Jersey. New Jersey seems to get high up in the draft whenever there's not good players.
Right. Well, you've also heard, too, that Jersey's willing to trade that first-round pick, too, right? So maybe they go move that first-round pick to bring in an already established winger, somebody who's 22, 23 years old, that they can really, just plug right in and not have to worry about.
Yep. And I'm sorry, Jack Hughes is he I think is going to be a great player. But I was just speaking.
He won't be an Austin Matthews. I mean, let's be honest.
No, so. But he's going to be a point per game guy for a long time. Yeah, he's going to be a very good player. Okay, let's go New York Islanders. We'll go from one of the youngest teams in the league to one of the oldest teams in the NHL, the New York Islanders. The biggest question for the Islanders, I think, is going to be, what are they doing on defense? Because Green is probably going to retire. Chara is probably going to retire. You're left with Pulock and Pelech and Noah Dobson, and then it's kind of a patchwork from there. Where's this team going? Because it sure seemed like they were just going to come back with the same team they had last year in terms of the forward group and just say, oops, last year was a mistake. We'll be fine.
Right. So the big concern, I think, and number one priority for this team come July 13th is going to be announcing an extension for Matthew Barzal. If they can't get him re-signed, or maybe Barzal's holding out for more money because this team does not have much money, this could change the dynamic of where they go moving forward, right? Because, look, you mentioned it, right? They need some people on the back end. They need some defensemen there. They've got Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock signed long-term, but outside of that, there's really nothing there. Yes, Noah Dobson, Sebastian Aho, you could sign. You're going to re-sign those guys, and to how long of a deal, I don't know. But really, the concern is Barzal. So if you get him re-signed, that'll free up so much money for you to go out and maybe try to acquire another top four defenseman, because that's really what they need. And outside of that, the other question mark too is what's going to happen with Semyon Varlamov, because you could move his $5 million and there's your money to go out and get that top four defenseman. So those are the two big pieces between the goaltending and Matthew Barzal's extension that are really going to determine where this franchise goes for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, now remember that Barzal he's arbitration eligible. So he can go to arbitration. He's coming off $7 million. So his next deal is going to be at least it has to be 15% more. So you're looking at an $8 million deal basically for 1 year for next year. If I'm Barzal and I'm going to arbitration, or I'm signing a 1-year deal, get me to UFA, and I'm cashing in and I'm going somewhere else, because Lane Lambert is just he's a carbon copy of Barry Trotz. I think it was one of the worst. Why fire a guy which now it's kind of coming to light that Barry Trotz, it doesn't seem like his heart was in it right now. Based on him coming out and saying, hey, I'm not going to be coaching this next year. I have some family things I want to do, and they've been taking a back burner, and I need to focus on those things before I come back, because if I sign somewhere, I'd be doing a disservice to that team. That's what he said. So I guess it makes sense that it wasn't really, maybe he didn't really get fired because they didn't make the playoffs. He probably more or less got fired because, hey, just your heart's not in it, and I think, we're going to just move on, and you can figure out what you want to do with your life. But my guess is that this just didn't come last minute. Maybe this has been kind of brewing for the last year, with COVID and all that crap. We've seen it happen to other guys. I mean, Lane Lambert has been his assistant coach since 2011. He was with him in Nashville. He was with him in Washington. And then he was with him in New York. Literally, he was with Nashville. He got fired by Nashville. And then the same day he went to Washington. Same thing with the Islanders. The day that his contract ended with the Capitals, he signed with the Islanders. He is Barry Trotz's guy. So you're not going to get a system change. It's going to be pretty much status quo. And for Matthew Barzal, I don't think that that's a good fit anymore. I think that
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, he's better than the points he's putting up. He put up 85 points in 82 games, and since then, he hasn't really come close to that point per game clip. And I think that's because of the coaching that he's under.
No, I agree. I think the system that he plays under is not ideal for a guy like Matthew Barzal, because you want to let that guy run free, go wild, go ham, whatever you want to call it. You plug him in with a talented winger who can finish, and this guy will light it up for a point per game every single season. He's got the wheels to do it. He's got the offensive talent to do it. And I agree with you. Lane Lambert is going to be a poor man's Barry Trotz, and I get it, right? The franchise comes out and says, we need a fresh voice in the locker room. And maybe that's so, right? Because, again,
to say the exact same thing, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we need a fresh voice, but we're going to bring in a guy who's going to do the exact same thing that Barry Trotz did, right? Yeah, doesn't make any sense. You could go out there and you could try to get, I mean, granted, he wasn't available at the time, but like you could bring in a Peter DeBoer. You could hang around and wait and see what other, coaches are available or see how the carousel falls. Now, I know, there was some fear because Lane Lambert's name had been brought up so much in other coaching circles that he was going to find a head coaching job somewhere. So maybe this is their last grasp at it, like, hey, we can't lose this guy. He's a talented assistant, no doubt. But, hey, you need a change. You need to change the system. And I know you have a core of guys who basically, are.
I mean, they thrived under it. They did thrive under that system. They went from the worst team in the league defensively to the best team in the league defensively overnight. Right.
But here's the question mark. Granted, I have no doubt in Lane Lambert's ability to be a quality coach, but what I do question is when it gets tough, when you're sinking a little bit, especially with this older group of players that really don't have that high offensive output ability like a lot of teams in the NHL, like a Sidney Crosby or, I don't know even who else to compare. But anyways, how is he going to adjust, right? Is he going to have that ability to adjust and really keep this team competitive and keep their heads above water? I'm very worried for them. Now, the one saving grace I will say is I think, Shesterkin this year for the New York Rangers was a revelation. No doubt the Vezina winner, and, deservedly so. I think we have a guy on the back end for the Islanders who could be that next Shesterkin next year, and that's Ilya Sorokin, who I think is a phenomenal goaltender and very well could be a Vezina candidate next year. Now, does he split time with Varlamov again? Does Varlamov go so they can free up some cap space? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really the big question mark is Varlamov. What do you do with him?
Right. He could go across the pond and go to Washington, right? There's a guy who used to play there who they would love to have him back. Or maybe he goes back to Colorado at some point if they can't re-sign Kemper, because at $5 million, I think that's a good price to get a starting goaltender. But, he is 34. Yes, he's got, 2-3 years of quality hockey still left in him, but it's going to be interesting for sure what this team does. Now, this could be a team, I think, like the Columbus Blue Jackets, that slip a little bit because I think, with the new head coach in here, the system that they play, if he tries to change things up too dramatically, it could really bite them in the ass. And I agree with you. I think Barzal, if he's smart, sign a 1-year deal, go to free agency, and I think he's going to walk.
All right. And if that's the case, then you're looking to deal him, right? Like, if you can't get him to sign, I think if you can't get him to sign this offseason, you're looking to deal him. He would have. Yeah. I guess he would have the. Oh, sorry. He's eligible for arbitration next year. So,
right.
But I think you want to. I guess you haven't. You can broach that conversation now. It's just not. It would be a tough place to stick around. Like, wow, look at all the aging players.
Especially if they start to hit the bottom of that division, right?
Right. Yep, it's going to be hard to pull yourself out quickly, and we'll see what Lou Lamoriello does. I'm sure that they're going to make some big move. I'm pretty convinced they'll make one big move, and it'll kind of shake everything up there. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on to the other side of New York, to the Rangers. They make it to the conference finals. They've got a lot of free agent forwards, unrestricted free agents: Andrew Kopp, Tyler Mott, Ryan Strome, Frank Vatrano, some important names in there, and they're going to have to re-sign Georgiev or trade him. He is eligible for arbitration, and So was Julian Gauthier, who had a nice playoff for them too. So it's this was, in my mind, maybe because of Shesterkin, he pseudo made their rebuild look like it was moving a little faster. But there's still a lot of holes on this team. And some of these other guys are like, you're hoping that Lafreniere, that Kakko can end up being superstars. Is still your hope. There's still that opening. But now you're going to have to start making decisions on some of these guys because, well, Kakko is your first guy to come up. He's a free agent. He's an RFA. And, how are you going to handle the rest of this? 18 points in 43 games, not that great. You're going to probably get him on a nice bridge deal. And you're going to have to kind of figure out what this team's going to look like in 2 years because this is the beginning of it. You've got Panarin and Zibanejad and Kreider and Barclay Goodrow. Those are kind of your they're all 29, 30, 31. You're going to have to start making some decisions on these kids and how you're going to pay them and what your salary structure looks like with that.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting team to say the least. I think I think we're going to see a few big moves. The middle, I want to say the middle roster of this team is going to look drastically different next season. So, I think obviously we've got Lafreniere with an extension coming next year, right? He's the guy you're going to want to keep around long term. I think he and Filipino looked really, really good last year or this season together in the playoffs. They surprised. They were probably the most consistent line this Ranger team had throughout the entirety of the playoffs. And always came up big in big moments. But I think the one big thing that stood out to me when I watched this Rangers playoff, because I had actually picked them to go all the way to the conference final in my original NHL bracket. But it wasn't necessarily because I believed they could go. It was just one of those things where it's sometimes you just take a gamble on a team and just, just because there's always that team that surprises people, right? So I figured, okay, yeah, we'll just shockingly see them. I didn't. In my heart of hearts, I figured they were going to get beat by Pittsburgh. And so, but they surprised everybody. And again, that's mostly because of Shesterkin. But looking at this team, right, it's clear to me, I think Jacob Trouba's got to go. I think you probably need to move him at some point. He looked outgassed by a lot of, the talented forwards that the Tampa Bay Lightning had. I think Keandre Miller, Ryan Lindgren, these guys are going to be phenomenal defensemen moving forward. I just think they need a little bit more seasoning. So for me, I want to bring in an offensive-minded veteran defenseman back there to help shore up that top four, and I think add a little
Jacob
stability.
Trouba?
No, it's
Jacob Trouba he had 11 goals, 39 points. He's pretty he was pretty good offensively.
Well, during the regular season he was fine, but I think during the playoffs he just looked out of place, and I think he got beat a lot of time by speed and just, overall, I think I would have liked to seen better play out of him. He was the one guy I think that was most disappointing to me during the playoffs for this team.
I just don't know how you're going to move him.
Well, maybe you don't move him, right? But I think you have to bring somebody in back there to help kind of tighten things up, right? And maybe once he has 2 years left on his deal and maybe you're willing to eat a couple $1 million with the cap going up, in maybe 24, 25, it's a little easier to move him then. However, for now, I think maybe you try to find a team that you can make a deal with somebody. And to me, I think when I look at this forward group, they're not going to be able to keep everybody long-term that they need to re-sign, both restricted and unrestricted free agents. And so I would move Kaapo Kakko right now if it was me, because he's still got a lot of good value. And like I said, that kid line was so valuable during the playoffs that I think he's going to get a lot of looks, a lot of phone calls to be moved. And so you could deal him to try to potentially bring in a top four defenseman, right? And so what top four defenseman, what team would a guy like that, could you make a deal with? I don't know. Again, there's options out there, through free agency too, but I think you could move him to bring somebody to fill in that top four. If anything, you move him to maybe you package him with a guy like Trouba to get Trouba's contract out of there, and then maybe you can go in and sign somebody else in free agency. I don't know.
Sounds like you're hoping that the Rangers will sign John Klingberg.
Speaking of signings, there is one guy I know they won't re-sign out of all of these free agents they have to re-sign, and that's Alexander Georgiev.
Well, he's an RFA.
He's an RFA, but their relationship is disgruntled, as Pro Hockey Rumors did put it. I know he wanted to get traded last year. He asked to be traded. So right now that relationship is a little disgruntled, to say the least. And so I know Chris Drury right now is taking calls on him, and I do suspect he will be moved, especially because, again, he didn't have the greatest of seasons. So do you want him as a backup, or, do you need to re-sign him as a backup? No. I think you can go out in free agency and find other guys.
Sure.
I mean, you could potentially go out and get a guy like, Casey DeSmith, Braden Holtby, even Scott Wedgwood I would bring in and use over a guy like Georgiev right now at this point. So you could probably move him for a middle to lower round draft pick and just get him off your books and move him out and bring in somebody else. But, obviously the priority after that is going to be, bringing back Andrew Kopp or Ryan Strome. And I think Andrew Kopp just looked more in, place there. He clicked very well with Panarin, and I think I would get him re-signed, and then hopefully maybe you can keep both of them.
Yeah, it'll be tough to keep both. Andrew Kopp, I think, is going to get paid. I think you're going to see Andrew Kopp get maybe $6 million. It's going to be tight.
Yeah, 6 doesn't sound out of the realm of possibilities. I mean, look, 18 points in 16 games, and then during the playoffs,
he was great in the playoffs.
Points in 20 points,
and he was hurt.
20 games. Right. Yeah, and so maybe it is the fact that, Winnipeg's system, right, maybe it just didn't really fit for him. And plus, he didn't get a lot of opportunities to play in that top 6. So, he gets that in the Rangers and really shine. So maybe if you're a team that's looking for a center and you have some talented wingers, you can say, crap, this guy would fit in perfect on our second line. Like, I think a team like Detroit, right, maybe they're not going to pay him a ton of money because Scotty or Steve Yzerman is, he doesn't really shell out a ton of cash for guys. Unless they're super high in talent, but he could come in and play with guys like Tyler Bertuzzi or Jacob Vrana, and I think he would continue to thrive.
Yeah, I don't know that Detroit would be his first option coming into free agency right now, based on where the Red Wings are, but
maybe Colorado, right? There's a team that could, if Nazem Kadri doesn't, sign for less than 8, he would fit in really well with them.
He would. Maybe Washington.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, in Washington, I mean, the idea of maybe getting to play with Alexander Ovechkin, that could be very attractive.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of teams aren't willing to shell out big term for him and big money, so maybe he takes a 1-year prove-it-again deal with Washington and cashes in.
I don't think so. I don't think he's signing any 1-year deals.
I don't disagree with you. But.
Based on his, he's at least he's been pretty consistent. The last couple years, once he's had this opportunity, and just what he proved in the playoffs, he'll and it might be more like a 3-year deal, take you to 30, 3
sure.
Maybe a 4 if he can. It depends on who you sign with. If you want to sign with a team that wins, and that's like a good team right now, yeah, you're gonna have to probably sign maybe a 2-year deal, 3-year deal worth like $3 million, $4 million bucks, but if you want to go to Detroit, Detroit will probably have to sweeten the offer and offer 5 years and like 5 times 5 for Andrew Kopp. I think would be a reasonable deal and would set Detroit up. Like, he's going to be good in 5 years, or we'll say when Detroit is really ready to compete for a playoff spot in probably another year or 2, he'll still be good.
Yep.
All right, last team in the Metropolitan Division, the Carolina Hurricanes. What do you think Carolina is going to do going into this offseason? Because it just seems like they just can't get over the hump. No matter what that hump is, they just can't get over it. And
no, and I think you and I talked about this right during our playoff series wrap up. I think they need a big superstar type forward to really get this team over the hump, and maybe they picked a good year because they have some money to spend, right? I mean, they've got a guy like Martin Nicias who I've heard is taking calls, right? His agent is reaching out to teams to possibly move him. So we may not see him back in Carolina this year. I don't know. I don't know why they decided to give Koke Niemi all that money. I think that was stupid, but whatever. They're going to hope he pans out. He's only 21, so there's still plenty of time for him to develop and maybe pay off on that contract. But with Vincent Trocheck, Nino Niederreiter, Max Domi, all those contracts coming off the books. They've got $19 million and change to spend, and really all they need to do is sign a couple, sign that one big forward, and then figure out Anthony D'Angelo or another top 4 defenseman there. So this could be a guy or an opportunity for them to bring in a guy like a Philip Forsberg, Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, I don't think he signs in Carolina, but Carolina is a team that's ready to compete for a Stanley Cup, and they're right there. So, they have a lot of different directions they could go in as far as where they want to spend their money, how they want to fill in those missing pieces. But I do think like I said, a game-changing forward would work really well. Maybe they go out and they make a move, make a trade, bring in a guy like Brock Besser who could potentially be out in Vancouver. Maybe bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois, right, who is rumored to wanting to go to free agency and test that market. So maybe Winnipeg deals him now. Really don't know. So
I mean, you're also don't forget about Seth Jarvis, who had a monster rookie season in his draft year, mind you. He's 20. He was 2020 pick. As a 20-year-old, I mean, he went and he had 40 points in 68 games, almost had 20 goals. He had a really good playoff too. He had 8 points, and I think you're going to see him take another step. And he's somebody who can really, I mean, he's kind of going to be that Jordan Staal leaves, and you can just drop Seth Jarvis right in there, and you've got a faster version of Jordan Staal. But yeah, I mean, in terms of free agents going to Carolina, it's one of those places that seems to be difficult to attract high level free agents. It's kind of like Columbus, right? Like it's been in the history of this organization, it's been difficult. Add on to that their owner is very stingy. I think it's going to be real tough. It's going to be real tough to draw those guys in who are like, I could go home, I could be really close, like I could be in Philadelphia or New Jersey for like a Johnny Gaudreau, sign a big deal, or sign back in Calgary. That is always a possibility too. I like Philip Forsberg. To me, I think it's probably more likely that he ends up back in Nashville than it does him going to Carolina. Like, Carolina is not going to be the team that goes out and goes, yeah, pay $10 million for that guy, bring him in. I just don't see it. I don't see it. They were offering, what did they offer Dougie Hamilton? I think it was like they were trying to get him for $7 or like $6.5 million.
$7,
and he signed for $9. Like, and they didn't want to give him the max term, I don't think either. So, I mean, you're just not going to get these guys if that's how you're going to value them. So they're going to have to acquire guys like, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois. That's a good target because he has to go there. I don't think that Pierre-Luc Dubois is getting like $10 million in free agency either. So you're going to be able to keep him cost controlled for a little while. But the Carolina Hurricanes, they're just missing something that's not getting them over the hump. Some of it, I think, was goaltending. You know, the fact that that Anderson was hurt when push came to shove, which I said would happen. Said that would happen. I knew it would happen. I knew it would happen. Every Leafs fan knew it would happen. Oh, time to rely on him? Yeah, he's going to hurt his groin. Yeah. That's just what's been happening to Frederik Andersen, and it's unfortunate. He's a great guy. He's a really good goalie. But he just cannot stay healthy through the course of a whole season, and more importantly, when it counts. But any other players that you targeted for Carolina or things you've got going on with them?
Boy, so what I will tell you, I'm sure you probably already knew this, but as of yesterday, their AHL affiliate, the Chicago Wolves, won the Calder Cup. So I think there's some talent there as far as, guys you can bring in for the bottom six. But, maybe, again, if you're trying to make a big move to bring in a top forward, which I think this team desperately needs, you could throw in a guy like Jack Drury, who looked pretty good in the Calder Cup. He basically finished third on his team in scoring with 24 points in 18 games and, was big for this team. And, again, there's some pieces there. But ultimately, I I just think they need to figure out what they're going to do as far as the forward group is concerned, because I want them to spend the money. I want them to go out and bring in a big name piece, because this is a team that I think has the right pieces right now to compete, especially because, Jordan Staal is going to be a free agent after this year. And the way he plays the game, I don't know how much longer he's going to be really good outside of the faceoff circle. So you might want to take advantage of that now. And then, again, you've got Teuvo Teravainen, who's only got 1-2 years left on his deal. So the window is small. Same with Sebastian Aho, right? 2 years left on his contract. Now, I do think he re-signs with them. I think they'll get something done with him and not let him walk. But maybe it is a guy like Matthew Barzal, right? Maybe you look at it and, come July 13th, they're like, hey, are you going to re-sign? And he says no. And so maybe you throw in all your marbles, right? You throw a guy like Jack Drury. You throw in a guy, Martin Nicias. Maybe you throw him in there and you give the Islanders some quality pieces that could go in and fill in those gaps for them too.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how you cut it, you've got a guy who can score goals in Svechnikov. You've got Sebastian Aho who can just burn. They have a good top six. They've got some good pieces on defense. There's just something holding them back. Like, the other thing is that Anthony DeAngelo is not signing a $2 million deal or whatever he was just coming off of.
No, yeah, definitely not.
So $1 million, one times one. He is going to get paid. He got 51 points in 64 games and had a really nice playoff too. I mean, they're going to need to give him some big money if they want him to stay beyond this, because he is arbitration eligible. I did hear that Ethan Bear was going to be moved.
Yeah, they're looking at maybe it's his agent then, instead of Martin Nicias's, that's been talking to other teams.
Oh, yes, yeah. It is Ethan Bear. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because again, I think, Brendan Smith, Ian Cole, you could bring either one of these guys back in to play as a 6-7 defenseman. I think both of them played fairly well for their roles in the minutes they were given. But a guy like Ethan Bear but a guy like Ethan Bear he's just not in your long-term plans, right? So might as well just move him. He's still an RFA, young enough where you're still going to get a decent return. Pesci, Slavin, those guys are obviously your top two. And, Anthony DeAngelo, you would love to get him re-signed and maybe at a reasonable cost too. Maybe you get him at like a 6x6 or something. But, it's hard to justify paying him more than a guy like Jacob Slavin because,
But when Jacob Slavin signed his deal, it was a different time.
Oh, sure.
I don't think you can look at that. He's not paid high enough to look at him and go, "Oh, we can't pay anyone more than Slavin."
Oh no, I agree. But what I mean by all that is Carolina, as tight as they hold their purse strings, that's their leverage, right? They're going to say, well, we don't want to pay you more than our top defenseman, so we have to keep you relatively close or under that, and so maybe that's not for DeAngelo, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's possible. Vince Trocheck, do you think he's back? Think he re-signs?
That's a tough one. I think there's a place for him in Carolina.
Oh, he had a good season, 21 goals, 51 points, and he had his best year since 2017-18. I think that it's clear he's a good fit there. And I think that Rod Brindamore's really worked with him to, he's a little undersized, but he's really worked with him to help him defensively. And I think that's allowed his game. I mean, you just look at his plus minus. I mean, he's been negative every single year, and then this year is a plus 21. I mean, that's not by accident.
No. But so the thing is guys that have put up 50 or more points at the center position. I mean, honestly, free agent wise, there's maybe 6 guys there.
Yeah.
So if you're Vincent Trocheck, you could probably go out and get paid a lot more money on a different team than you would, staying in Carolina. So it's really, the decision is, do you feel comfortable taking less money and staying here to compete for a Stanley Cup, or would you rather go somewhere else where you can possibly get a few more, $1 or $2 more million, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There really isn't, in terms of how many points he actually put up. There really isn't many other players that compare to him on the market. You know, you've got Nazem Kadri, and I'm not even going to include Bergeron because Bergeron he's only signing in Boston, so it hardly counts, and he has so much experience. Maybe you consider Giroux a centerman. At this point, I think
Absolutely.
he's probably more of a winger in terms of what team's going to sign him. And then it's like Andrew Kopp. And Andrew Kopp isn't even a true center. You know, he's not playing center all the time. He's kind of getting tossed around. And then maybe the other one's it's Strome. Well, Strome's a winger. Yeah, so there really isn't much.
Yeah, Ryan Strome played center, and Kopp was on the wing. But still, those guys they can play on the wing, they can play center. So they, you know, again, there's only a few of them, right? That's the whole point. Yeah. So he could cash in, right, with a team that, you know, is really looking to solidify a number 2 or maybe number 3 center position.
Yeah, maybe paying him 6. 6 would probably be the limit for a Trocheck.
Yeah, and I think if you're Carolina, right, you're not giving him more than, I don't know if I'd want to give him more than $5 million. So.
And at 28 years old, you're probably looking at like 5 times 4.
Yeah, at the most, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's a tough sell. I mean, I think that he's a good fit there. He has a good role, and like you said, he's playing good under Rod Brindamore. I guess it also depends on what else they're able to bring in. So I think this division is like every team in this division is going to get better outside of maybe Columbus. I think that's probably the one team you're looking at and you go, I don't know. Maybe the other team I could see would be the Islanders. I could see the Islanders taking yet another step back and going, oops, yep, actually last year wasn't a fluke. We just aged out. Well,
it's funny, the Islanders, right? You look at this team and they just started off really rough. I mean, they didn't really play at home till
20 games
it seemed like the last game of the season. But, you know, I think with Barry Trotz gone, right, that's where I look at the Islanders possibly slipping, you know, especially with whatever happens with Matthew Barzal. If they can't get him re-signed, they decide to move him. Who knows? I mean, obviously, I think he'll play out this year, being an RFA next season. So, for me, I think the Islanders, yes, I completely agree. I think they're poised to take a step back. I think Columbus is.
And maybe Washington will probably take a step back, but they're still a playoff team.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Pittsburgh and Washington are still potentially playoff teams, but I think because they're getting a little older, their core is, and a little uncertainty for both teams in goal, whether that's, you know, Pittsburgh's, you know, number 1B slot and Washington trying to find a starter here. Some of those wins they're getting are probably going to go to teams like New Jersey and Philadelphia. So, you know, whether or not any of those teams fail to make the playoffs again is another story. But I still think the cream of the crop, right, is Carolina and the Rangers, I think, right here at the top.
Yeah, and, I think this division will be tighter. You're not going to see you look at the teams that made the playoffs and the teams that didn't as a 16-point gap. I don't think you're going to see that again, 4-5. It's going to be a much tighter division. I also don't think you're going to see where, every playoff team in the East had 100 points. That was an interesting year for sure. All right, well, that's the Metro Division. Justin, we went for an hour and 38 minutes on the Metro Division.
Ooh, we'll have to shorten that up here.
Yeah, we'll shorten it up for the other divisions, but that's all right. I don't mind. So we'll likely do the Pacific Division next, and then we'll hit the Atlantic and the Central, and then we'll be at the draft coming up on July 7th. So just about less than 2 weeks to the draft. So I'm
excited.
Yeah, it'll be real fun. All right, Justin, you have a good rest of your day. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Leave us a nice review wherever you're listening to, and have a great rest of your day.